All right, Penn State sports fans, blue-white breakdown time. Dave Jones, Bob Flounders on a Thursday, lunchtime. It's all about the men's hoops, Davey. We got the right guy on the podcast. Dave, it's been a crazy last couple of weeks for Penn State basketball, for you. There's so many things we could start with. I'm just gonna. Do you want to talk about the new head coach? Do you want to talk about the former head coach? Do you want to talk about Penn State's AD? What do you want to start the ball rolling?
I want a nap. Can I have a nap, Bob?
You can nap soon enough.
Or are we going to talk about Mike Rhoades and Jay Paterno's smell?
I know. I was trying to stay clear of that one.
Which ostensibly began about basketball NIL, but had nothing to do with that. It was about their simmering animosity from a dozen years
ago. Ripple in the pond wasn't like a hockey fight. Doesn't take much. It doesn't take much.
You want to go?
I'll go. You want to go? Let's go.
I think the first takeaways, Bob. The first takeaway is the money. Did you see the money? Could you believe that? I don't know how well versed you are in compensation for Penn State.
I guess we'll say his name. Mike Rhoades, a Pennsylvania kid, is now Penn State's men's basketball coach. And Dave, I did see, reading your story, total compensation around $26 million if everything works out. But I couldn't believe what I couldn't believe, Dave, is Purdue's not paying their head coach nearly enough for the job he's doing.
Hey, Bob, $1 goes a long way in West Lafayette, as you know.
Sixth on the list? Sixth? Come on.
As you know, $1 goes a long way along what is it? I can't remember.
West Lafayette, Ross 8 Stadium?
You remember that? What was that Days Inn or Holiday Inn right on the interstate?
2003. Those were not the great days of travel.
What a destitute location.
So Mike Rhoades is getting pretty handsomely compensated.
Yes. His average yearly compensation, and of course, you always get an advantage when you're the last hired in these days of ever escalating salaries. But his average annual compensation is $3.7 million. Which puts him currently fifth. He won't get paid as much as like Greg Gard or I think I said Painter, some of those guys this year, but their deals expire way before his does. So anyway, the point is that it puts him smack in the middle of maybe even a little higher of Big Ten compensation of coaches, which has never been true. It's never been close to have been true. Micah Shrewsberry, I believe that this is interesting also. All of a sudden they're publicizing the contract when they're throwing out these figures, right? Which they never did before. They have never publicized a men's basketball coach's contract ever. And all of a sudden they're doing now. Maybe there's a reason. I think it's because they were embarrassed about the figures before. Remember the Don Maynard thing when he's talking about negotiating with Weeb Eubank? Who used to negotiate the figures, and Weeb keeps pushing figures on and saying, "What about this? And what about this?" And finally, they agree on one, and Weeb tells Don Maynard, "Now, don't tell anybody about this." And Don says, "Don't worry, Weeb. I'm just as embarrassed about it as
you." So you're saying Jerry Dunn probably didn't make anywhere near this? Is that what you're?
Not Micah Shrewsberry either. I mean, I believe with pretty good authority. That he was making right around $2 million, which would have put him at the bottom in compensation in number 14. And before that, Pat Chambers, who was only fired 2.5 years ago, I believe he was making 1.2. So, and you can go back before that, Ed DeChellis, Bruce Parkhill, everybody, no one was paid in the 30-year history of Penn State's Big Ten membership market value like Mike Rhoades is. So that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is I think Pat Kraft, as I said in the story, landed the plane after a bumpy ride, and it was a bumpy ride.
Very bumpy early, very bumpy.
Micah Shrewsberry, I'm not positive they could have done anything to keep him because he got a look at what Pennsylvania is, central Pennsylvania, which is not a basketball-loving locale. It's not. and he saw little things.
Yeah. What is it like? It's fishing's number one, then hunting, and then football, and then
Wrestling.
I think it's dive bars. That's
Wrestling.
like top 4. And wrestling.
Yeah.
5. There's your top.
Pickup wrestling, just with your friends.
Oh, we're going to get a lot of trouble for this podcast the way it's going. A lot of trouble.
Christo-fascist worship, that's another one. No, I just think it's stunning that they would make that sort of commitment to a basketball coach. It is absolutely unprecedented. The other thing is that Joe Crispin is going to be on the staff, which I think is interesting. Penn State hero, probably the most recognized player in the sports history at Penn State. A name that everyone knows. He graduated 22 years ago, so I think he's like 40 years old now. It's hard to believe Joe.
Don't sleep on his brother. Don't forget about his brother.
And he and John do a hilarious podcast together, but they both have, and Joe especially, he's been coaching at Rowan at the Division III level, went a round deep into the NCAA Division III tournament this year. He coaches a very up-tempo style. It's not exactly West Head, Loyal, and Marymount basketball. It's not like a shot every 4 seconds. It's not intended to be that way. It's just fast. Whatever they do hard, and he plays 11, 12 guys. He's going to be an offensive consultant on this staff. He will not be allowed to recruit outside of State College. Okay. It's a new position the NCAA has created just in January, where it's basically
like an analyst almost, like a football analyst?
Yeah, but he's much more of an on-hands coach. So he can do everything that a usual coach can do, except he can't go off campus to recruit. That's the only thing he can't do. But as a teacher and a philosopher about basketball, he's going to have some very strong ideas. And I assume Mike knows what he's done here, because Joe Crispin will be heard. His opinions will be heard. And as a friend of ours used to say in politics, they need to be pissing through the same straw. I think you know who we mean there.
Yeah.
So that's the second thing, and the third thing is it's going to be a tough rebuild, man. They have lost. Yeah. They probably have lost Evan Mahaffey, who was I think their most important freshman. He's in the transfer portal. I don't know. Maybe Mike can keep him. As far as I know, he is not committed to another program. But he's from Cincinnati. It's not like he's a local kid. They got Kanye Clary and Keba Jai, the big center, and the point guard. I got that backwards. Jai is the big center. Clary is the point guard. All three of those guys played important minutes, rotation minutes this season. And it would be great if Mike can keep them all. I don't know if he can do it. And then, of course, Braden Shrewsberry is going to be out the door, probably to Notre Dame. There was another kid from Indiana who was a really good recruit that he's in the portal too. So it's going to be a mess next season. There's no getting around it. You can, in the portal these days, you can fix some of those things very quickly. I mean, you remember where Shrewsberry was when they hired him 2 years ago. This program was a grease fire. Mm-hmm. And he managed to get him to the NCAA tournament in 2 years. Yeah. It's easier now than it used to be, but it's going to be a real tough slog for Mike next season.
Yeah. For the Penn State fans in general, as they continue to read your stuff on PennLive, just your thoughts, just a little bit about the past of Mike Rhoades. I know you can start at a lot of different places. Also, I know that you've been talking to him. Just ask him for me at some point. Has anyone ever told him he looks like an adult Anthony Michael Hall, the kid from the Breakfast Club?
Come on.
No, he does. I swear to God, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. Ask him if anyone's ever asked him that.
Why don't we just go find a picture of Anthony Michael Hall today?
Well, when you do, you're going to know why I brought it up.
That should be clickbait.
Anthony Michael Hall and this guy later in life separated at birth. I'm telling you, it's scary. Anyway,
Anthony Michael Hall today. You can't believe what he looks like now.
But just a little bit about Mike, and he's just a phenomenal accomplishments as a player at Lebanon Valley, and then worked his way up the coaching ladder, and has really had a lot of success just about everywhere he's gone. Isn't that correct?
I'm not so sure. I was not at one of Mike's games the night that Mike Tyson was upset by Buster Douglas. I think he was a freshman maybe, he might have.
That was 1990, I think.
Yeah, he might not have been there yet. I don't think he was there yet. But they ended up winning the national Division III title under Pat Flannery at Lebanon Valley College, the Dutchman, and he was the point guard. He was the player of the year in D3. He was a terrific player, a 3-time All-American at that level. So you would have to believe these days maybe he would have stepped up in Division I with the portal being the way it is. He got started at Randolph-Macon. A lot of the key takeaway from his history is that a lot of it is around Virginia and the DMV, which is a honeypot recruiting site in and around the Big Ten footprint. DMV, for those uninitiated, means DC, Maryland, Virginia, and all of that area right around Washington, D.C., but extending out. The definition has gotten fuzzy lately because the recruiting grounds there, the turf is so fertile for football too, but really for basketball. I mean, this is, if you go down into the Tidewater region, that includes Allen Iverson and all sorts of people. If he's been down there, I think it's 18 years altogether, between Randolph-Macon, where he was 11 years, and VCU, where he was between Shaka Smart's staff and his own tenure. Hell, it's probably been about 20 years in Virginia. He has been all over that state. He knows high school coaches and AAU coaches all over there, and it's a very important state for recruiting, especially for Penn State. Maryland has recruited that area forever because that's their backyard, but Penn State needs to do it too. And it's a good thing that Mike has that experience. That's important.
Yeah. Real quick, I know it's only been a little bit, but his personality, anything you want to mention about that? Do you think it comes across, and do you think it comes across on the basketball court?
I don't know that his real personality comes across to the public, because he's a great guy. I mean, I've known him for a long time, and you can talk to him about a lot of different things. So the last time I was talking to him at length, we were talking about music and all the different stuff that he likes to listen to, because we were talking about what I'm going to do when I retire. And I said, I'm just going to go back and start playing keyboards and really, really learn. And
you are.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I took lessons when I was a kid, but when you're 8 and 9, you don't want to do that. You want to go out and play touch. I
feel like this is kind of a scoop right now. I'm a little excited about where this might go.
No, I mean, I believe
you. I believe you.
We have a keyboard. Oh, what happened to it? We're tearing up everything, as you can see, and that's what's over there. The keyboard.
Kaiser, what did you do with the keyboard?
That's Anna rearranging everything because we're getting new carpet. So
okay.
Anyway, it used to be over there, and I can't really play it the way I want to play it. And I love music. I mentioned that to Mike, and we went off on a riff for 10 minutes just about different bands, and he loves Pearl Jam. He loves a lot of different bands that guys who are 50 really like. But he's a very eclectic, interesting guy who can talk about and enjoy stuff outside of basketball, which, as you know, with coaches isn't always easy. Right. They can't talk about a lot of things. He's a very interesting guy, and we've been lucky to have these last two. Micah Shrewsberry, just an awesome guy. Really, really loved that guy, and they have been in touch. I can tell you that. And Micah had a good talk with Mike about the challenges of this program, and that entered into some of the things that he negotiated and made sure that he got before he took this job, because this was no tap in, man. Yeah. This was in some doubt until I would say about Tuesday.
Yeah. Dave, why don't we just go right there then? You brought it up, the challenges that go with being and building a program at Penn State. You said Micah became aware of them in a fairly short period of time, and I'm sure Mike has an idea of it. But generally speaking, for the uneducated, or what would you just say, if you had to outline maybe 2 or 3 that are really people don't realize all that goes into being the coach?
One would go under a broad heading of infrastructure, and just stupid little decisions like if he wants to go recruit somewhere, he can be able to take a flight right now, because that's what you have to do a lot of times if you're a coach. That hasn't been possible. If they want to practice in the Jordan Center, they should be able to do it. But I think the Jordan Center is managed. I don't even know how you explain these
That's
people,
insane.
but they have nothing to do with the athletic department, and they can schedule stuff in there any time, any way. And from one time that Shrewsberry played a game, it would be the next time they played a game before they were back in the Jordan Center.
Yeah,
and they're sharing the practice facility with the women.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And in the Jordan Center, you've got a career fair, and then you got a seminar, and then you have monster truck rallies, and then it's one thing after another that have nothing to do with basketball, which in other places, that's just easy for the coach. Yeah. Here, everything is a challenge. And not only that, but everyone's got a little bit of an attitude where they go, "Oh, we've never done that before." What do you? You're facing roadblocks and hurdles at every step from people who do not value the sport. They just don't.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that Micah had 3 occasions at the Jordan Center this last season where people stopped him because they didn't know who he was. Now, can you imagine that? Can you imagine that anywhere else in the Big Ten? Well, I don't. And he's not an indignant guy. He's not the kind of guy who would say, you do the Billy Packer and say, "Don't you know who I am?" He just got out his ID and showed him and then went on his way. But I mean, can you imagine that happening at any other school in the Big Ten, especially in Indiana? Everyone knows who the basketball coach here. Can you imagine it happening to James Franklin at Beaver Stadium? Ever? No. That's all part and parcel of all this. Then you have NIL, which really is all-encompassing at all times. And they really didn't get off their ass and do anything until the 11th hour. It couldn't happen. And by that time, I think Shrewsberry had already decided, I've had enough of this crap. I'm going back home because they raised $500,000 in the last 2 weeks, only during that run. Yeah. And he's thinking, what happens if next year? And next year is going to be a tough slog for Mike because they got nobody back. Shrewsberry had to do whatever he had to do, which was piece together this team full of fifth-year seniors and transfers, and now almost everyone is gone. They got Kanye Clary, Kebajai, and maybe Evan Mahavy back, and that's it. It was going to be a tough slog. So where's the NIL money coming then? Do you have to have a big, energetic run in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAAs to get a fundraising thrust going? I mean, so Mike needed some assurances. I believe that Pat Kraft gave him his word in some cases, and then I think it was probably put in writing other places. This is what we're going to do. We will see how it works out, but next year is going to be tough. It is. Yeah.
Dave, so if I'm reading this right, if you wanted to set up a men's basketball program to fail, Penn State had all the bases covered up until about a couple of months ago. Is that a pretty apt description of kind of how bad it was?
I've covered this stinking program for 34 years, and it's always been this way. It's always been this way. It's just that people do not really value the sport. There's a few hardcore fans who do, and they always say to me, "I think you're underestimating the fan." Like, I've been here a while. I've been here more than half my life. I think I got a handle on the fan base around here. I do. And I don't think I'm underestimating anything. And that really all emanates from that, is that the fan base is a fair weather fan base, a bandwagon jumping fan base. And if they have a reason to get on the bandwagon, then they'll get on and go, we are. But up until then, they're really not on board. And that's the problem. You're going to have to create a force, a thrust, independent of the fans. And that's to Pat Kraft's credit. I mean, I gave him a big L on losing Shrewsberry, but I think this is a W in getting Mike Rhoades and convincing him that it was going to be a new age. So I'd say he's 1-1 at this point.
So, Dave, we're talking a lot about Mike Rhoades, and you just mentioned Pat Kraft, but I just want to circle back to Micah, and what he was able to do at Penn State, and also what you just said about some of the challenges that he faced that really 99.9% of Penn State alumni, probably forget basketball fans, didn't even realize. I mean, I'm glad you said that, because I just think that I just remember there were a lot of people that kind of felt like, well, Micah had his moment, and he just kind of threw Penn State under the bus to go back home. But
which is total bullshit.
I know, but I'm glad that you're bringing this up, because I want the Penn State fan base to understand just all the things that he had to kind of face.
You know, it's like a lot of people around here are more worried about the school's brand than they are the people who actually have the hands on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't treat those people right and give them help, they're gonna leave. but these people are more worried about the image of an institution. What kind of sense does that make? I mean, question things a little bit. Question the people in charge and what's always been done a little bit, because that really is. You could go back to Bruce Parkhill and get stories like this. You can. I've heard them all. I've heard them from Ed DeChellis, who left after an NCAA tournament run and took a 40% pay cut to go to a low major. What does that tell you? And nobody has been paid well. So they're finally turning that around. But Shrewsberry, his gift was the gift of creativity. I mean, he put something together. You remember the old show Top Chef, where they give you 6 weird ingredients and you got to make something that's palatable? That's what he did this season. He didn't have a lot. This was what it ended up being, which was a 10th place team. And yet they were on a roll in the last month, even after that horrific gag job to Rutgers at home. They still overcame that. They won 8 out of 10. And what he was doing was really bothersome to the rest of the Big Ten, because they didn't face any team like Penn State. He figured out a way to use Jalen Pickett as a maestro, as a core of the offense, a hub in the middle. It was almost like the old Princeton point forward, except Pickett was diving deeper into the middle of the defense, sucking more guys in there, and then bing, 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 is spraying the ball all over the place with the other advantage he had, which was shooters.
Yeah.
A lot of good shooters. He did what was necessary, and they had no post presence on either side, on either end of the court. I mean, it was really rather remarkable how they were perplexing and befuddling other teams one after another. They swept Illinois in 3 games, and Illinois never came close to figuring out what they were doing or how to handle it. And that's a superior athletic team, a team that's much, much more athletically gifted than Penn State, and they beat them 3 straight times. Indiana, another one. They swept them 2 games. That's the preseason pick to win the league.
Yeah.
So that's Indiana, Illinois, Iowa. These teams, they swept every game against those teams. The teams they had problems with were the ones who put them in a phone booth and packed it in, and they got lucky a few times on 3-pointers. Wisconsin and Rutgers, who played really, really good defense until their Mawat Mag, their big spidery winger, got hurt. So those are the teams that gave him trouble. But it was hard to give Penn State trouble. They gave other people trouble, and they really perplexed other teams. So I thought Shrewsberry did an amazing job with not much.
Yeah. Dave, one more thing I definitely wanted to get to with you. Your opinion on what stood out to you more, or maybe it not stood out, but it seemed a little bit from the outside looking in that Pat Kraft got caught a little flat-footed at one point when this started to go downhill. The snowball started to roll downhill. There was that part of it, but there was also the way that maybe he was able to pivot and recover and get somebody like Mike Rhoades here. What do you look at maybe what he's learned and what he was able to do and the lumps he took? How do you think he's going to come out of this?
Well, I think he made a decision to invest in basketball. And he said he was going to do that. He did it. He did it a little too late because he didn't feather the bed for Shrewsberry to make it a palatable job. Maybe he couldn't have anyway.
Right.
That case has been made, and maybe that's true because as OB used to say, at the end of the day, maybe they just don't love basketball enough for a guy from Indiana. And maybe that's true. But and Notre Dame ended up paying Shrewsberry $4.2 million over 7 years, so he's got even a bigger contract than Rhodes. Maybe he never could have done it. But with the NIL, I think he needed to be on top of that and figure out a way. You're never going to have a sugar daddy for Penn State basketball.
Wrestling's got him, football's got him,
hockey's got him, football's got him.
Yep.
But there just aren't any for basketball.
Right.
Even at Northwestern, they got a guy named Ryan who will fund everything. But in basketball, he basically rebuilt their arena, and it's beautiful now. It's what Penn State could use. I mean, imagine if they had a refurbished rec hall with 7,000 seats in it.
Imagine if they actually owned their own arena and they could use it.
Well, they own it. They just don't run it. The athletic department doesn't run it. That's the weird thing about it. That's why you got Bon Jovi in there, a hair band 12 years ago during the NCAA tournament run, and they couldn't get in the arena. Those are the things that look, you got to give Pat a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. What's he been in here? 8 months? How long has it been?
Yeah, like the summer, I just remember the summer is when he finally kind of started to assume control.
Well, he's juggling about 12 balls all the time, and God knows what he was dealing with that did not come to light. But basketball is the one investment you can make where you can hope to make back more money than you ever had. Because this was just a loss leader doesn't exactly say it, but it was a sport where they knew they didn't have to put any effort into it. And this was true all the way back through Tim Curley's tenure. They just decided they could make $4 or $5 million profit every year, not trying.
Right.
So they didn't try. Why try? It's a turnkey operation. Just roll the balls out there, make sure the balls are inflated, and you've done your job. Well, not really. There's other things that can be done with the arena too. And I'm waiting to see what they do to make the Jordan Center more intimate because, first of all, they got to turn off that god-awful noise that P.J. Mullen, who's no longer there. Have you been to a men's basketball game?
I have not.
It's like going to Chuck E. Cheese, except at 120 decibels, okay? It's just intolerable. So, and that isn't just for old people. That's for anybody.
Yeah.
And the philosophy is that, well, basketball doesn't matter to anyone around here, so we'll have to spice it up with other things. That isn't necessarily true. And I'll tell you what, there's probably 1,000 townies who would come back to the games if they didn't have to listen to that. It's just garbage. It's like 20, 25-year-old ESPN jock jams. That stuff all the time. And it doesn't happen in the rest of the Big Ten. It doesn't. And that's got to be fixed. They have to be able to get into their own arena a lot more often. That has to be fixed. There are things that can be done with the product that will make it more enjoyable for people to be there. I don't know if that will get done. So that's Pat's job too. It's a complete overhaul, and he's just getting started. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't know that Mike Rhoades is a sexy splash hire. He's not. Okay, he just knows what he's doing.
Yep.
But guys like that, it'll take him some time to get things going here, and it's going to be tough for the next year or two. It just is. Even in the transfer portal days, it's going to be tough on him. And I don't know if it's a good atmosphere to get people really charged up the way you need to. Yeah. That's going to be a problem.
Dave, I got two things for you real quick before we get out of here on the blue-white breakdown. I want to get your quick analysis of the Final Four in Houston. It's going to be UConn and Miami in one, Florida Atlantic, and I believe those San Diego State rough guys in the other semi. What do you see? Have you had a chance to even watch basketball last weekend.
The coaching searches and being out in Des Moines and being in Chicago before that, it's just all encompassing. And when you're on a beat, all you're thinking about, well, is Shrewsberry's going to leave. I can tell he's going to leave. How do I ask him so that he'll say kind of what he's thinking, which he did, and now who's going to be the coach, and this is all encompassing in your mind. So the answer is not a lot. I did already pick Connecticut to make the Final Four because I believe in them. I think you've probably watched more than I have. I think they're a very versatile team with a big guy in the middle who's very powerful, and guys on the perimeter. They can beat you a lot of different ways, and I like that about them. San Diego State would be my second pick, but I don't think they necessarily – they're probably the most impressive athletic team of the four, and I think they win that game out there, but I don't know if they can beat Connecticut. I think that's the championship game.
Miami could score the ball, Dave. They could score the ball, but UConn could defend the ball.
Yeah, and usually in these games, the way it's always a dome. This will be the stadium where the Texans play, and usually you're not going to see a big scoring binge. You usually hand the advantage to the defensive-minded team. Although Jim Larinaga would love nothing better than to beat Connecticut, because he's a New York guy. Yeah. He has heritage with Jim Calhoun way back, and that's still you can say whatever you want about Danny Hurley, but that's still, in my mind, it's still a Calhoun program. I mean, he left such a stamp on it, and he's got legacy all over the place. I know Larinaga would love to beat him. He beat him once. Remember, he beat Connecticut to get into the Final Four with George Mason.
That's right.
And I was there in D.C., and that was incredible. I mean, it really was really enjoyable. Now he's got serious players, so there's no doubt Miami can beat them. I would just give this slight advantage to you. Where's the line? Do you even know? I haven't looked.
I think UConn opened as a 5-point favorite in that game.
I would gobble up those points, wouldn't you? I think the difference is going to be in there someplace.
Yeah. All right.
2, 3, 4.
Dave, this is my last question for you on this podcast, and I'm very serious about it. Down the road, when you start to hone your skills on the keyboard in retirement life, how good can you be, and what are some of the songs you're going to play? And it better not be any of that techno pop you just ripped Bryce Jordan for.
When we got the keyboard, I actually started noodling around and found out there were tutorials on YouTube.
I know.
You'll laugh at this.
I'm not going to laugh.
The first thing I found that I thought I could play the chords right was Midnight Train. She's on the midnight train. So all that. And I was when Anna would go out. Yeah. I didn't want to hear me singing and playing, so I
How about "Don't Stop Believing" from Journey? Could you keyboard that? Do you think
that's the same song?
Oh, I think you meant the Midnight Train to Georgia.
No. The real name of the song I think is Midnight Train, not Don't Stop Believing. No, that's what I was playing. Yeah.
You have to master that. That's got to be the first song. And then you could call up Mike Rhoades and keyboard him some Pearl Jam over the phone and see how he likes that.
Was that Steve Perry? Was that the lead singer?
Steve Perry. I think Neil Sean was the guitarist. Yeah. I can't remember anything about keyboards, but they definitely were a factor for Journey.
And the drummer, Carmen. Oh, yeah.
How about some Loverboy? That's another good one for keyboard.
Could I get that?
Everybody's working for the weekend. Can you get that one dialed up?
They're Canadian, dude. I could get that red leather jacket the guy had on.
You already have a red leather jacket. Oh, gotta go get one.
How about some Paul Anka? You're having my baby.
All right.
What a lovely way to... That would be very politically incorrect.
All right. Whoever is editing this, leave all this in. That's all I'm saying, because I'm going to circle back in a couple of years so I can play this for Dave, and we'll see how serious he was about keyboards, my man.
What's the question? What?
I was going to say, we'll see how serious you really were about keyboards, my man.
No, I'm serious. I want to do other things. Okay. Yeah.
All right, Dave. Great chatting with you. We will talk next week. It might be about football, but it was a great basketball chat. Hopefully everyone listens and follow Dave's Penn State basketball stuff on PennLive. You heard it here first from me.
Enjoy the Final Four, everyone.